Hey, I'm Ben Silverio.
And I'm Ansel Birch.
And it's
time to party!
Dun, 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 dun.
Nope, wrong
Nope.
franchise.
Nope, that's not it. Someone's gonna get mad
We're off
at
to
that
a
one.
great start. Yeah, someone will be mad. They don't need to be, but they will be. So Ben, when you first pitched this episode for this month, you said you can explain the finale of Picard to me, and I was curious as we go into more of the review part of our coverage. What was it that you meant by that? What are the parts that were sort of curious to you as a sort of newer Trek viewer, and what are the things that made you want it explained, I guess?
Yeah, you touched on it a little bit when we were talking about the Guardian at the Gate. That was one of the things that I wanted to bring up, because I wasn't sure if that was a reference to something that I didn't know about. But also, another moment in particular that I was thinking of was Wesley Crusher.
Oh, yeah.
Is he a Time Lord now? Is that...
Kinda.
Is his whole thing an established Star Trek? I don't know. Has that been discussed already?
Yeah, so Wesley Crusher, in one of his last appearances on TNG, he met a being who traveled through space and time, and was called the Traveler, and the Traveler had been injured, and Wesley Crusher and he worked to fix the Enterprise before the Traveler was well enough to go on his way. And Wesley Crusher is this, incredible scientist, has enormous understanding of warp field, so on and so forth. So the Traveler is like, hey, kid, you're pretty cool. You want to come be a Traveler? So the implication here is that Wesley Crusher, when he sort of disappears from the show, became a Traveler. And, yeah. The only thing that causes problems here is that we did see older Wesley Crusher at one point at like a graduation ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember who it was, but they were all in dress uniforms, and we saw Wesley Crusher as like a guest at this gala thing. So I don't know, maybe he popped in for this special occasion or whatever. But yeah, this is sort of tying into that Traveler episode. And on top of that, it's also tying in the concept of Watchers, which is something that happened in TOS, as well as here. So it's sort of picking up two loose threads and tying them together, which is nice. It's very tidy in that way.
Using Wesley as the glue
Yeah.
for those loose ends.
I am curious at what point they decided to add this, because it was very clear to me that Will Wheaton was not able to come back for reshoots of that scene. Because if you pay close attention in all of the shots over his shoulder, it's definitely not Will Wheaton.
Oh.
It's different beard, different jawline. The collar on the jacket is different. The material of the jacket is, I think, a little different. It really stood out to me. Again, I watched it 2 extra times, which is probably my fault. But it definitely felt like that was not Will Wheaton in the foreground of those over-the-shoulder shots.
I'm trying to think of what other moments were things like, oh, I don't really remember that, or was that a reference to a thing? As a longtime fan, were there any moments in the show that you thought would be like, oh, this would probably be confusing for new watchers?
So I have a weakness, and that is that I generally like to assume that people will ignore the stuff that doesn't get in the way of their understanding the moment. And I feel like this show did a good job of putting things in that would be cool for us if we've watched it, but not get in the way if you haven't. With the exception of... And I think, honestly, I think you probably got just as much information out of Wesley Crusher showing up as you would have. You just maybe didn't get the same excitement. And I think that's true of all of the references that we got. You know, it's similar to when Seven of Nine showed up in the first place. You know, that was really, really cool for those of us who knew who Seven of Nine already was. And for people who didn't, I'm fairly certain that they did a good job introducing her to the show in such a way that new viewers would be able to still interface with the character, right? You'd still understand what her deal is and why she's there. We got flashbacks, we got people explaining, you know, the number of times that they had to call out specifically, you used to be a Borg, you know Borg stuff. With your Borg implants, do you know anything about... You know, like, they constantly called it out.
Right.
Something that I caught in rewatching the... Because I also rewatched episode 1 today to sort of look for things that they had looped around. I did think it was interesting that they called out that the reason that the Stargazer was special, which is the ship that they were on initially and that they bopped back to at the end of the episode... is that it had been using technology claimed from a Borg artifact, which was a dead Borg cube.
Yes.
Which is a plot point. Yeah, run by Hugh, yeah. I guess we covered all of that, but I thought it was interesting that they brought it up. I don't think it came up again in the last episode. I think it was just in the first episode to explain why the Queen, now we know Jurati, was able to hack into the ship's systems. So yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah. You know, I feel like a lot of my Star Trek fan friends haven't come around on Picard that much. But, you know, maybe it's because I don't know any better, but I've enjoyed both seasons of Picard.
I really love it. Yeah, and I'm prepared to be wrong about that, but I don't dislike this long arc storytelling that they're doing at all. I think it's got a lot of benefits.
Here I am coming from shows like WandaVision and Agent Carter, you know, because like, while, for example, one of Stella's many things is Star Trek. You know, that's one of her main things. That's like one of her core things, you know? And
she has like more than one Star Trek tattoo. Yes,
exactly. And if I were to have more than one tattoo of something, it would probably be Marvel. So, you know, I totally get the hardcore longtime fans, and I now understand the appeal of Star Trek. You know,
I'm glad to hear that,
because I don't know why. No, I do know why. Because when I was younger, it was always like, oh, Star Wars or Star Trek. Like, you had to choose, like it was some kind of gang. But honestly, all sci-fi and fantasy should be open to everyone. And gatekeeping is stupid. So
it really is.
Like,
I think
Marvel versus DC, like, why? George Perez and Kurt Busiek brought them together in a lovely crossover that was like a one of a kind, even though they did it like 3 times. But like JLA Avengers is like the seminal crossover, you know?
Yeah. I think it came from a concept of scarcity that wasn't real.
Yeah.
You know, in the 60s and 70s and 80s, it was so hard to get your fandom to feel like it was recognized, that there was this sense that there wasn't room enough for both Star Trek and Star Wars and Babylon 5 and all of the other, series that were going on. And to a certain extent, that's true. If you look at how that all shook out, it's pretty obvious looking back that, Babylon 5 and a lot of the other sci-fi properties that didn't have the same following didn't get rebooted, didn't get, follow-up shows. A lot of them are dead and in obscurity now, as opposed to, having 4 new series ongoing simultaneously the way that Star Wars and Star Trek currently have. But now we live in a time when I think that even that illusion of scarcity is gone. There's no question that there's plenty of room in the sandbox for all of your space adventures. And what a time to be alive.
Oh man, it's like, for a number of reasons, the world is terrible, but there are some things that just make being alive right now so worth it. Especially if you're a nerd who was made fun of relentlessly for liking nerd shit, because nerd culture became pop culture. And you have people who made fun of you in grade school and high school, now ranting and raving about how good the latest superhero thing is, or how they're reading a comic book finally. It's wild to me.
It truly is. It truly, truly is. So I'm curious, again, given your exposure, how did you feel about the alternate timeline that we came in on after the first episode? Talking about this.
I thought it was interesting. As we started to learn more about the thing that changed, I guess it was kind of a given that it would be connected to Picard, right? I mean, the name of the show.
One would hope.
Yeah, but it. My initial thought on that being such a big part of the season was like, oh, maybe they didn't get as much in the budget and they needed to set some of it in the near modern day to recoup some costs. Like,
I mean, yeah, a little bit probably.
Like, like I said earlier, I love a good holodeck episode, and so in a way, for this to bring Star Trek to the quote-unquote modern day, because of course it's still like a few years into our future, it's kind of funny to see things like tricorders and phasers and teleporters in quote-unquote our world. But I had fun with it. I love an alternate timeline. I love a multiverse. And I mean, clearly by the topic of these podcasts, I love time travel. So I appreciate it when time travel has consequences. And this showed the consequence of Q changing this one thing and how much different things can turn out. Ashton Kutcher's The Butterfly Effect.
Yeah. Which, I mean, that is a concept that they invoke throughout the series, which I thought was really cool, the way that they referred to stuff left behind and mistakes they made as butterflies.
They should have called them Kutchers.
Make sure you collect up all the Kutchers. You can't leave a single Kutcher behind.
We can't be punked.
All right, now we need to make that show.
Starring Jean-Luc Picard?
Sure, if we can get him. I thought it was really interesting that they kind of showed their cards to us in that first episode. Or in that, not first episode, but in that first reveal. Because when Picard is at Chateau Picard and he sees all of the trophy skulls, all of those races are races that had been enemies of the Federation at one time, but became allies. And most of them were ones that we saw that happen through the course of the show. Like the Klingons were the big bads for the original series, and then TNG showed us that they had, come to peace, and now Worf was our first Klingon Starfleet member. Then TNG introduced the Ferengi, who were supposed to be the big scary bad guys, but turns out they were too cartoonish, so they didn't last very long. And then in Deep Space Nine, we find out that the Ferengi we've come to peace with, and now we're friends. And we see a Ferengi join Starfleet, and we've seen these races who are, the big scary bad guy come to terms with who the Federation is and discover a way into that Starfleet mentality so many times. And to see it happen with the Borg is, really impressive and cool, especially given what happened in season 1.
Yep.
But I thought it was especially interesting that they tipped the cards towards us early in the season before making the full transition at the end of the season here to seeing that these new Borg are now allies and petitioning to be part of the Federation. And
yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I thought that Jurati was gonna fail, and the Borg were gonna continue to be the big bad Borg. I mean, Borg is so powerful that they even extinguished the hopeful light of Jurati, but no, that's not where they went. They went in a much more hopeful direction, and we need some of that. I appreciate it when our media can still be hopeful in the face of the world being terrible. And that's really what we go into these things for, right? Like to see better versions of our world and what it could be.
I mean, that is what Star Trek is meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's about empathy and communication overcoming differences.
Yes.
That's what Starfleet is. It's so much part of their ethos that it's frequently a plot point in episodes that, this person came in real hot and shot at us and tried to be a dick, but we are Starfleet, and we are not gonna engage in combat unless it's absolutely necessary, and unless we've tried diplomacy first. It takes a lot of doing to get a believable fight going with Starfleet, unless you've either A, established that the bad guy already did some horrific thing, or B, there's an admiral who's gone absolutely crazy with power and decided to take over, which is why I think admirals should be tested for mental acuity on a daily basis in this universe. The number of times where that was a plot point, where it was just like, Admiral shows up, Admiral is bad guy. That's the episode.
And I think that's that element of hope is what drew me, or at least kept me on board with Star Trek. It's nice to have that in a piece of media. I'm reminded of that one review about Turning Red by I think it was
Oh, right, yeah.
yeah, the dude who couldn't relate to the story because he wasn't a teenage girl and stuff like that. And and like you said, empathy is important. The world needs more of it, and Star Trek is doing its job by providing and teaching that as much as they can. I wanted to touch on a moment in the finale. At least I think it was the finale. It could have been the penultimate episode, where Seven becomes a captain.
Yeah, that was in the finale.
That was in the finale. Yes. Okay.
He
I
gives her the
watched the
field
last
promotion.
three at the same time, so they kind of blended together. I really like how even after Janeway stuck her neck out for Seven of Nine, and she didn't get to join Starfleet at the time, that she finally gets to be a part of this thing
Yeah.
that she's actually been a part of all throughout Voyager and after. You
Yeah.
know?
Well, and it really is about the triumph over prejudice in that one. And you're right. It's almost sad that we had to see it happen as a field promotion and not like someone officially from Starfleet being like, 7 of 9, we are sorry, we were dicks. But regardless, she does get the captaincy that she deserves and wants. And like that's good enough, I guess, in the long
Yeah.
run.
So hopefully next season we see her and Rafi on a ship with Elnor. Speaking of Elnor, why didn't we get more Elnor? Like, was Evan Evagora like off shooting something else and they had to write him out? Like,
Maybe?
I loved Elnor in season 1, and I was looking forward to seeing more of Elnor and the characters played by Issa Briones.
Oh
We
yeah.
saw the one for the most part, but these are two extremely talented young actors that were highlights of this first season for me, and I didn't get enough of them in season 2. I hope season 3, even though it will be largely focused on the next gen reunion, it seems
Yeah.
like, I hope that characters like Elnor will get to shine still.
I would hope so as well, and I wonder if I guess I'm curious where big Star Trek is going from here. Because we're doing a lot of TOS era stuff. We've done Discovery was in TOS era. Strange New Worlds is in TOS era. I wonder if characters like Elnor and all of the younger characters are being set up for whatever our next thing in this time period is. Because right now we've got a lot of stuff going on in TOS. We've got some stuff going on in the far distant future, but very little going on in this, immediately post Voyager DS9 era. So I have to wonder if there isn't going to be something done with these characters going forward.
Do you think there will be some like end game level crossover between things that, or maybe not end game, but maybe like a Defenders level crossover with the TV shows that take place in the same era?
The ones that take place in the same era, almost certainly. I definitely think that they would be fools not to. But as for the like cross time,
Yeah, we don't necessarily need that.
yeah, I don't think that needs to happen. Although I could certainly see it happening. I wouldn't put it past them to have, a time rift somewhere where Captain Pike has to help someone from the far distant future or whatever.
At the very
Especially
least,
given what's going on with Discovery right now, that would not be the weirdest thing they've done.
at the very least, I could see Issa Briones as Corey Song and Wesley Crusher popping up somewhere in the timeline. You know,
For sure. For
I'm
sure.
I almost I mean this is almost like Arrowverse esque, but I could almost see the Travelers getting their own like Legends of Tomorrow type show. Because they have to protect
That
the
I would
timeline.
watch. That I would watch. Well, and there's been a lot of noise about wanting more Wesley Crusher. To the point where there was a petition, as I recall, to get Wesley Crusher added to Picard season 2. And as far as I know, it was a complete surprise to everybody that he was in this episode.
Now, I thought that a lot of Star Trek fans disliked Wesley Crusher.
That is true, but we all like Will Wheaton.
Oh, okay.
Which is an important distinction.
Ah, got you. See, I'm not in tune with all of the
Yeah.
all of the
Will
things like
Wheaton,
that.
Yeah, Will Wheaton has made a huge impact on the fandom, on nerddom in general.
Sure.
He's been such an enormous advocate for nerd culture. It's sort of undeniable the impact that Will Wheaton has had over the last even 10, 15 years.
Yeah, and we're not going to hold Big Bang Theory against him.
Yeah, who could? Who could? I mean, everybody got excited about that at one point.
It's true.
So I think Will Wheaton was the thing that we all got excited about. But I think the other thing that's happened recently is that a lot of us have re-examined Wesley Crusher, who was objectively obnoxious as a kid. But I think that there's been sort of a renaissance of appreciation for Wesley Crusher in the fandom lately. And I don't know what is fueling that, if it's like a general, increasing understanding of neurodivergency, or people, as they are coming to a greater understanding of their neurodivergency, associating with Wesley Crusher, or being able to finally utilize him as an proxy, or if it's just in general us all looking back on it now this many years later and going, well, I guess he wasn't that annoying. I couldn't say. Honestly, I don't know that I've seen anybody making a neurodivergency argument for Wesley Crusher, but I think that there could be one made.
Are you a Buffy fan also?
Yes. I will admit to being a Buffy fan as well. Yes.
So that's another fandom that I came to super late, right? I didn't watch Buffy as it aired, but that was another show.
Oh, same.
Oh, really?
I was shown Buffy. I was shown Buffy when I first started dating my now wife. Because it was necessary viewing for me to understand her. was how it was placed in front of me.
Cool. Yes. I don't know, just kind of like in the same way how I decided to watch Wings. I just decided to watch Buffy at one point, and although I did make the mistake of not watching Angel at the same time.
I don't think that was a mistake.
Oh, really? Because at the end of Buffy, I was just like, oh, maybe I'll just go back and watch Angel, and I don't really have a desire to. But I bring this up because from the outside looking in, it seemed like Wesley Crusher was getting a lot of the same reaction as Dawn Summers.
Yeah.
And I didn't really understand the hate until I watched their respective shows. And I didn't necessarily hate the characters either, but I was just curious about the fans and their reactions to these characters who
Yeah.
were children at the time. You know,
Yeah.
it just seemed like
Well,
there was
and
a lot of hate going around for these kids.
I think the thing about Wesley Crusher was that when we were kids, it felt like Wesley Crusher was the after school character who had somehow found his way into Star Trek.
Mm.
And so, like, whenever there was a Wesley Crusher episode, you knew that they were going to try and relate to you, kids of the actual real world, and help you with a thing that's relevant to your actual life. And, that's great. That's what Star Trek is for. But I think as kids, it maybe felt different because the adult stuff wasn't hitting that way. So the Wesley Crusher episodes felt like they were talking down to you almost as a kid, I think. And I can only speak to my own experience there as just sort of finding Wesley's episodes being a little cringy. They always felt a little like, oh, okay. Yeah, no, give me a metaphor for why drugs are bad.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess that's where my viewing of Star Trek was very different because I had people telling me what to watch and what not to watch, and I didn't get a ton
when you
of
get
Wesley.
the curated. Yeah.
I,
Yeah, I can imagine not. There's the episode where space video games cause a big problem on the ship. There's the space drugs cause a big problem on the ship. There's a lot of Wesley being okay with being smart, and learning to be confident in the intelligence that he has.
yeah, I don't know why.
And the famous episode where Picard tells him to shut up.
Yeah, I saw that one.
Yeah. He was all busy being right at the time.
I just remembered a really funny moment from when I started watching. I came across Tasha Yar.
Yeah.
And I texted Stella and I was like, oh, I like this character. And she was just like, oh, just wait.
I like that she said just wait and not don't get attached.
I mean, essentially, that's what she was saying. And I'm like, why? What could happen? And then we
This
get
is
it.
clearly a main character. What's the worst that could happen?
Exactly.
She wouldn't get stuck in the Windows background, surely.
The Windows background.
I mean, tell me that's not the environment that Tasha Yar's memory is kept in.
100%.
It absolutely is.
Although I did find it interesting how they managed to incorporate the actress in the show later on down the line.
That was fun.
I'm a sucker for stuff like that, you know? Warwick and I were just talking about Indiana Jones and how he greatly dislikes Crystal Skull. And
Which is fair.
And my I guess this is a hot take, apparently, at least in our apartment, that I prefer Crystal Skull over Temple of Doom. Because I liked revisiting those legacy characters and finding out what these characters were doing later in life and rejoining Indy for new adventures and stuff like that. You know, I like seeing Sala and Marion, you know.
Sure. I wouldn't go so far as to say that I prefer it, but I think, and this is my hot take on Crystal Skull, I think Crystal Skull knew exactly what it was and tried to find a new way to do what Indiana Jones always does, which is bad guy tries to exploit someone else's idea of godhood. That idea of godhood fucks them up and melts them, starting with their eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, it was space aliens, but tell me that it doesn't follow the pattern.
Right. And I mean, to be clear, Temple of Doom and Crystal Skull are my least favorite Indiana Jones movies. And, like,
Sure.
I but I'll still watch them because I love Indiana Jones.
I think Temple has a lot of really great scenes,
Thanks
but
to
is
short
not
run.
a strong movie.
Yeah.
Whereas Raiders and Last Crusade are strong movies that have, strong scenes throughout.
I mean, an argument can be made that Raiders and Crusade are like masterpieces.
I would follow that argument, yeah.
Oh, they're just so good.
So good. So good.
I remember in college, I wrote a dream sequence that was a spoof on Raiders for a Filipino American culture show.
Oh, okay.
Basically this show is an excuse to like put Filipino cultural dances and like modern hip hop dances into a very loose storyline. And I got the
Okay.
idea when I was, part of the group to like make an actual like storyline instead of making it like really loose.
Madness.
So like I wrote a script like that was definitely way
Sure.
more involved than some of the past shows. Also, I didn't write it by myself. We had a whole committee. It was great. But I had a scene that opened the second act that was basically the boulder scene.
Oh, great.
But we didn't really have a budget, so all of our props were like cardboard.
Sure.
So having a giant cardboard.
Was it just a giant cardboard ball, or was it?
Oh, it was a
one
circle.
Circle of cardboard that somebody
Yep.
rolled like a wagon wheel.
Exactly.
Yes.
It was very
That
fun.
is the right answer. That is the right answer.
Yeah, I miss college sometimes.
Right? There's some shit that you just can't do in real grown-up life.
Yeah, it's true. Like, running through a fountain in your underwear
Yeah.
after a party.
It makes me think, if time cannot give us second chances, maybe people can.
Aw.
I know. Thanks, Jean-Luc Picard, for that little pearl.
Yeah, way to go, JL.
Yeah, good. I love that Rafi is the only person ever to call him JL.
It's so fun. But like when I first started watching the show, I was like, Green Lantern? And I'm like, no, wait, that's GL.
Oh, that's good.
I mean, Picard could totally be a Green Lantern.
That I would absolutely buy that crossover. So the thesis that we get at the end of the show is that this is about forgiveness.
Yes.
Do you think that that's accurate?
Yeah, because a lot of what Q puts Picard through is in order for Picard to forgive himself. And that can be the hardest type of forgiveness to dole out, A lot of times you can be your own worst critic, and that a lot of times involves not letting yourself off the hook for things that you did in the past, whether you could have controlled them or not. Maybe you just blamed yourself for something that you can control, like Picard did.
Do you think that's also true for the other characters?
I think for the other characters, it was more so forgiveness. Well, here it is. Forgiveness comes in many shapes and sizes, right? So we got to see it on a number of different levels. Seven of Nine got to reconcile her human and Borg side that have always been an issue for her, right? Rafi came to forgive Starfleet in a way. Like this is going back to season 1 also. Like she was so out of it before but now she's come back around to be part of it. But
Yeah.
also um, she's in a way forgiven herself for not giving herself the care she needs, you know?
Yeah.
So like she
Well, and I
lets
think
herself be vulnerable at the end with
I
Seven.
think she also gets the opportunity to forgive herself for putting Elnor in harm's way,
Yeah.
which granted is not by her own action, but is something I'm glad that they wrapped up at the end of the season.
Right. And then on the flip side, Corey Song did not
Yeah.
forgive her father. Nor should
Should
she.
she?
You know,
Should she?
uh yeah, so that just runs the spectrum of forgiveness, you know. Each character touches on that in some way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
So to have that be the theme of this season, I think would be accurate.
And then ultimately, Laris forgives Jean-Luc for not kissing her that night.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. But yeah, so I guess it makes sense to wrap things up by talking about the time travel real quick. And I was just curious how you felt about the time travel, um, given the way that time travel has been used in Star Trek up till now. How much time travel have you been exposed to in your Star Trek viewing?
Um, I think most of it is holodeck stuff. You know, where they don't
Oh,
really
okay.
time travel, but like they just go to a different time period. Um,
So have you seen First Contact?
yes.
Okay.
Um,
So we did some time travel in that one.
right.
We
There's
did some
also
inadvertent time travel in
and
Generations.
there's also time travel with Dr. Fraser Crane because he's a captain,
Yeah,
right?
that's right. He is.
Um, and he's almost like the Star Trek universe's Captain America in that he's a man out of time. I guess his ship
The,
would be the Captain
which
America.
happens more often than I would like to admit. That is a trope that they like to go back to.
They keep going back to that well.
Oh, sure do. Sure. The best one is the banker who's been cryo frozen. And is a real a-hole to everybody because he's convinced that he's rich and he could buy the whole ship. And it's just such a beautiful moment.
When he finds out that they don't use actual money anymore.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of those opportunities where Picard gets to go, well, this gets awkward, but
Yeah, about that.
tough news, buddy.
For a show that isn't about time travel, I think they utilized it well. As
Mhm.
as it relates to previously established Star Trek canon, um, I'm probably not the right person to speak on that because I'm not as familiar with the other
Well, that's why
uses.
I'm
You
curious
know,
what your thoughts are on it, because I think it's interesting to hear your thoughts as a neophyte, as
Mhm.
somebody who's not like stuck on the way that they've done time travel in the past.
Yeah, because each time I've seen them use time travel, it's been a little different. In
Hmm.
the limited instances that I've seen the trope used in this franchise, and I appreciate that there's different ways to do it. It's not just the one way. You know, you
Hmm.
don't just have the TARDIS taking you where you need to go, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and I guess technically falling through the cracks of time is another way to do it in the Doctor Who universe, but the TARDIS is the main way, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The
A
DeLorean
TARDIS.
is the main way for time travel in Back to the Future. The hot tub in Hot Tub Time Machine, you know. But in
Yeah.
but in Star Trek, you have many different ways that you
Couple
can
options. Yeah.
accomplish the time travel, you know. And I like that, you know. Like there's not just one. There's more than one way to skin a cat, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
This does go back to their favorite, I will say.
yeah.
This is the most consistent.
That Q does it.
Oh no, the slingshotting around the sun thing.
Got you.
Yeah. That is also how they did it in Star Trek 4.
Ah, yes.
The incredible Star Trek 4, which eventually we will do with Stella Cheeks.
Is that the one with the whales?
Show. That is the one with the whales.
Aha.
Yes. It's incredible. And you asked about references. They put a reference to Star Trek 4 into this show.
Oh, with the dude in the bus, right?
The punk on the bus, yeah. It's the same guy. And I learned recently that not only is it the same guy, he wrote the song.
Oh?
For the original and the reprise of the song that they played on this one.
That's a fun fact.
He is both the punk and the artist featured.
Cool.
Which is fun. I thought it was a little unnecessary, but I wasn't mad about it at all.
I feel like that's a lot of these new things that have come about because of streaming services. Like, I don't think we really needed an Obi-Wan series, right?
Oh, disagree. Hard disagree.
Yeah?
I needed this. I needed this more than even I knew. It's so good.
No, like, it's great. I love it. Don't get me wrong. Don't misconstrue me here. Like, I don't know. Like, it just seemed like we knew where he was going. But I do love Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi. So I'm very happy that we finally got this show. But just like, if we didn't get the show, we got a pretty good idea of what happens to old Ben.
That's fair. We know his story for the most part.
Yeah, so it's great that it exists, but it doesn't have to. Like, and the same thing here, I don't necessarily think that Picard needs to exist, but I'm glad that it does.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely on board with it. I'm a fan of this show.
Yeah. Please give me more of it. Thank you.
Yes. And unfortunately, we're only getting the one more season.
Only one more?
Yeah.
But, I mean, which brings me back to, I wonder where they're going with it.
Right.
Because we are in the Avengers age now where, you can run multiple simultaneous stories and interconnect them all and have them cross over and all of that stuff. I can't imagine that they're going to let characters like Elnor and Kore go after this season, after this series is concluded.
Okay, here's my pitch. At the end of Picard season 3, there's moments of a backdoor pilot for a show starring Worf, and all the people we like from Picard end up on Worf's ship.
I've heard some noise about a Captain Worf show.
Oh yeah, that's a real thing.
I've heard. I don't know how reliable it is, but I've heard some noise about it, and I want it to be true, so I'm not checking it.
What if Elnor hangs out with Worf?
What if Worf gets to be captain of the Excelsior?
There you go.
We've just established that Rafi has put herself on the Excelsior so she can watch over Elnor. Mm-hmm. 7 of 9 could be there.
There are ways it could happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
We can get there together.
Heck, you could put 7 of 9 in a different ship. That way you don't have to get Jerry Ryan in every week.
Yeah?
I want you to get out Jerry Ryan in every week, but I understand that Jerry Ryan may not be down for that.
Right.
I get the sense she might have some other stuff going on.
Maybe. So Ansel, as a long-time Star Trek fan, would you say that Star Trek Picard is worth your time?
For me, Star Trek Picard was absolutely worth my time. I have enjoyed every minute of it. I really think that they did something special here, especially putting in this time travel element, especially putting in the alternate timeline that has elements of the mirror universe while still being distinct from the mirror universe. The little nods that were there just for us, as well as just this phenomenal new area of storytelling that we've not seen from Star Trek before. Yeah, without question, this has been worth my time, and I respect the other Star Trek fans who aren't into it, but I am. I very much am.
They're making it for you, Ansel.
Yeah. Hey, I'll take it. I'm right here, and nom nom nom. Give me more, please. Take my Paramount Plus subscription money, forever and ever. How about you, as a relatively new Star Trek fan? What would you say that this was worth your time?
Yeah, Picard was the reason why I ended up getting into Star Trek, and I'm glad that they went into these long, undiscussed elements of the character. Sir Patrick Stewart is a gem. He's phenomenal, and I think we should appreciate him while we have him, like as much as possible, as much as he would like to participate.
Yeah. Yeah. Good way to put it.
Keep bringing him back as long as he wants to be brought back, because both of these seasons have been very enjoyable for me. Even if I didn't know everything going on, I still got the gist of it.
And I'd wager that now when you go back and watch more Star Trek, you're going to pick up things that they put down in Picard later.
Sure. Yeah.
Now you get that reference going the other direction.
Right.
It's still there for you.
There's a whole universe out there still to be explored.
There's years and years of material for you to take in.
Listen, I still haven't watched the latest series of Barry yet because I'm not emotionally ready. So who knows?
So it may be a minute.
Yeah, so who knows when I'll actually get around to the rest of Star Trek.
Fair enough.
Hey, like when I started watching Doctor Who, I just stuck with the stuff that I was into, I haven't gone back into classic Who really. Although I do feel like I have a weird fascination with the Eighth Doctor that most people don't share.
The Eighth Doctor, the one short the movie Doctor,
yeah,
that
guy, because during the 50th anniversary when they did that like mini-sode with his regeneration, I really liked that, but also I like Paul McGann's charisma. I wish we got more of him. And then finding out that there's a ton of audio dramas starring the Eighth Doctor.
So much.
So in that little, mini-sode, they tied some of that in and made a canon, which I thought was fun.
It was nice.
I like Easter eggs sometimes. So having stuff like that, even though I wasn't really involved in the fandom like that prior to
I also have a problematic favorite Doctor, so I feel you.
Is it don't tell me. Is your problematic fave Doctor David Morrissey?
No. No, it's John Hurt. And he's only problematic because we will never get more.
Oh. Well, he has some audio dramas too.
Does he?
He does.
With John Hurt?
Yeah.
Well, I know what I'm doing tonight.
Yo, Big Finish is wild.
Okay.
Like I'm really curious about how much of Big Finish is canon, because they go all out with some of their audio dramas. Like, fans have been clamoring for more Torchwood. Here's Captain Jack and a bunch of Torchwood audio dramas. You want Dr. Donna? Yeah, here's Catherine Tate and David Tennant. And now, for the 60th anniversary, we're getting Tennant and Tate back together again.
Well, shit.
So...
sign me up.
Yeah. I don't know what Russell T is planning, but looks like some big stuff.
That's very cool.
That's another thing we could have easily done a special episode on. We haven't talked about Doctor Who yet.
That'll be our next one.
Yeah.
That'll be our next one.
And like this one, I am fairly novice with the Doctor Who fandom as well. So
Same. I've watched a fair amount of Doctor Who, but by no means all or even a lot of it. Yeah, I cannot pretend to be a diehard Whovian. But that's for another time.
Haha. Party people, thank you for joining us on this very special episode of Time to Party. Just another reminder that this month we are taking a break. Like I said before, I'm probably on a train right now while you're listening to this. If you're listening to it when it dropped.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at oceans and stuff. Reading on trains.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, we all deserve a break. Especially Ansel. He puts up with all my bullshit.
We both deserve breaks. But yeah, it's gonna be a good month. We're taking a little time, but not so much time, because we'll be back in July with new episodes. But you can find us on the internet. I am at Indecisionist on Twitter and at The Indecisionist on Instagram.
I am at bsilverio20 on Instagram and Twitter.
This has been an Indecisionist production. Special thanks to April Moralba for our podcast art, and to Marlon Longid of Marlon and the Shakes for our amazing theme song.
Yes. And if you'd like to join in on the conversation, you can use the hashtag Time2Party. That is time, the number 2, party. Until next time, when we are reunited with your ear holes, be excellent to each other.
And party on, dudes!
Dun, 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 dun. Oh, that's the wrong song again.